The Great March towards the restoration of Dae Han's history, recovering the Genesis history and original culture of the Korean nation. Hwandangogi Book Concert. Korea opens the history of Radiance of Heaven and Earth.
In 1911, revered master Dae Han published Hwandangogi at Mount Myohyang, evading the swords of Imperial Japan. A century later, Ahn Kyung-jon's annotated and translated version of Hwandangogi into Korean has finally come to light. Ahn Kyung-jon, the annotator and translator, has dedicated his life to uncovering the original history of the Korean people and the archetypal culture of humanity, with the conviction that the great future of the Korean people and humanity can only be realized through the Tao of Wunshi Banbon, or seeking out beginning and returning to the origin. This annotated and translated version is the culmination of that lifelong passion. This work is the result of his relentless commitment to the empirical study of Hwandangogi, a historical scripture and the sacred text of humanity's archetypal culture, believing that only such study can heal the deep-rooted poison of Japanese colonial historiography and correct China's centuries-long distortion of Korean history. Ahn Kyung-jon, the annotator and translator, not only devoted himself to researching both domestic and international literature and collecting materials from historical sites across Northeast Asia and around the globe, but also meticulously examined newly unearthed artifacts to faithfully uncover the historical truth that Hwandangogi seeks to reveal. After 30 years of dedication, he has finally translated Hwandangogi into a comprehensible form, complete with extensive annotations and explanations. This work puts an end to the persistent academic controversy that dismisses Hwandangogi as a forgery and corrects the distorted history, thus revealing Korea's true 9,000-year sovereign lineage and the essence of humanity's archetypal culture.
Dae Han, Great Korea. Dae Han, Great Korea opens the history of the radiance of heaven and earth. This program, consisting of 3 parts, is from the Hwandangogi Book Concert, held in LA and New York City, USA in October 2013, by Ahn Kyung-jon, Honorable Translator and Annotator of the Hwandangogi.
Now, Elle would like to summarize today's talk by touching on Sumer, the origin of Western civilization. We heard about Sumerian civilization through the Old Testament. Christians in particular should know about it very well. On the other hand, the Japanese compiled their first historical literature, the Kojiki in AD 712 and the Nihon Shoki in AD 720, to fabricate the history of the fallen Baekje, the homeland of Japanese culture, and to cut off all relations with Baekje, the mother country of the Japanese. They insisted that Japanese history began independently on their island, and lasted for 10,000 generations without a period of discontinuity. Interestingly, these books from the outset said that Japanese culture began from Samson, the triune spirit, and spirit teaching, which is the very historical topic of the Hwandangogi. They were talking about the historical subject of the Hongshan civilization. However, just as the Japanese eliminated their own cultural roots, Jews cut out the origin of their own history. From the Jews originated Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the origin of the Jews is the very history of Sumer civilization. What is the historical essence of the so-called 5 books of Moses, including Genesis, in the Old Testament? The Pentateuch reveals that they came from the eastern land of Hwandangogi. Speaking of Abraham, looking back to around 4,000 years ago, it can be clearly stated that he did not live in a state, but tribal society. A few groups of relatives were wandering together. Then, where were they from? Abraham, along with his father Terah, was originally from Ur of the Chaldeans, which is located in the south of today's Iraq. They moved to Haran and then, after packing up their belongings, migrated to Canaan, that is, what is now the land of Israel. Therefore, their history cannot be older than 4,000 years. The Jews faced constant invasions by foreign nations, which made their living conditions very difficult. The first nation of the Jews was founded as the last judge Samuel prayed to God to send a king who could save them. The first king of Israel was Saul. Israel's second king was none other than the renowned David. The third king was Solomon, who built the temple with great extravagance and was judged by God. He caused the ruin of Israel, and the kingdom was split into 2. Saul's era was about 3,000 years ago, and then, 100 years later, Israel became a tributary state under the Roman Empire. 2,000 years ago, Israel ceased to be a country. The Jews wandered for 2,000 years. Although the history of Israel began in the middle era of the Daedong Joseon dynasty in Korean historical terms, and at the beginning of the Zhou dynasty in Chinese historical terms. Although the nation of Israel lasted for less than 1,000 years, they preserved their history and passed it down by maintaining their religious faith with an iron will. Because of this, people evaluate the Jews' history as a great story. Where were the Jews from? From southern Iraq. The Garden of Eden, Noah's flood, and the entire Genesis story was today's southern Iraq near the Tigris River. But where were the Sumerians from around 6,000 years ago? Western intellectuals really want to know about their origin. The origin of Western civilization, the origin of Egypt's pyramid architecture, was Sumer civilization. In India, the Aryans had built Hindu Veda culture after conquering India 3,000 years ago. Where did the Aryans, the noble people who brought the Vedic culture, come from? They came from the Sumerian civilization. Where did the Greek culture in Western history emergent around 2,500 years ago come from? They came from Sumer. The Sumerian civilization was the true origin of Western civilization. But where were the Sumerians from? From around the 19th century onward. Countless examples of cuneiform script and clay tablets were excavated in this region. Some of these artifacts were sent to universities in the U.S., England, and the Louvre Museum in France to investigate.
So, what does all this lead us to?
According to the interpretation, the Sumerians confessed that they came over Tian Shan from the east. Anasan, in the Sumer language, means heaven mountain. They likely crossed the heavenly mountains to arrive in the land. They had a conception of heaven and earth. I once borrowed a book from the New York Library here entitled History Begins at Sumer, written by Samuel Noah Kramer. Each chapter of this book speaks about first in human history, the first school,
The first instance of corruption,
the first Congress, It is marked by numerous world's firsts across a wide range of fields. Anki. They had a conception of heaven and earth. The royal authority of their king came from heaven, which indicates they believed in the emperor as the son of heaven. They used the sexagesimal cycle, opened the first school, made the first dictionary, and so on. An important finding is, quite interestingly and culturally significant, they called school teachers father. In a boy's essay titled Apple Polishing, his teacher came to his home and his father gave the teacher a piece of cloth to ingratiate himself with the teacher. The boy's father bribed his son's teacher. Interestingly, the boy called the teacher school father. The teacher called the boy school son. The Sumerians had the original culture of the sovereign, teacher, and father. Let's take a look at this photo of an artifact. He was a contemporary of the first Dangun of ancient Joseon, 4,300 years ago. This is King Sargon of Akkad, who united Sumerian civilization.
Let's examine a stone relief of Sargon I.
He is standing in front of a mystical sacred tree with 3 branches, and each branch has 3 fruits. There are clusters of 3 fruits hanging from the branches that extend from the large stem of that tree. They both appear in threes. The branch on his left hand has 3 fruits. This image emphasizes the Oriental culture of the number 3, the holy culture of the number 3, the original spirit teaching of all spirituality, and the religion of the East and West. The more surprising feature is the top knot on the head of King Sargon. At the top of King Sargon's head, you can see a top knot. To modern people, this top knot custom may be considered a remnant of an older generation of grandfathers putting their hair up in knots and fixing them with pins. Such an ignorant era, people think of it this way. However, this is the original human hairstyle. It contains the historical secret of the culture of human genesis. The top-knot culture embodies the purpose of life that humanity pursued in the earliest cultural age of humankind. No Koreans know what the top-knot custom means. Even experts don't know much about it. Buddha Shakyamuni put his hair in a top knot. The Chinese characters for the word Sangdu signify upper, sang, and the Big Dipper, Du. It means Big Dipper. Therefore, in the era of the primordial civilization of the East and West, the purpose of human beings was solely focused on synchronizing the body and soul with the northern heaven, where humans received earthly bodies and where the true God ruling this great universe resided. This is precisely the reason why the top knot was worn. For that reason, Buddha Shakyamuni and kings in the Middle East put hair up in top knots. Recently, in Japan, this top knot hairstyle became a trend among ladies, and certain Korean entertainers adapted this style, calling it the Poo hairstyle, due to their ignorance and loss of their own culture. This was an absurd situation. This hairstyle for ladies became overhyped. Eastern culture was transmitted over the Tian Shan Mountains and flourished as Sumer civilization. That culture was passed down to Israel by Abraham and turned into Judaism. In the Old Testament, the most powerful origin of Eastern culture was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Jews' God always proclaimed, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." This phrase appears in the Old Testament repeatedly. What is the reason this is important? It's because the wives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were infertile. One must always receive Samson to conceive. Abraham was 99 years old and sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. And dosing, Samson came to him. 3 men visited him. Abraham met them and served them tender calf meat and milk. That incident was receiving Samson. In the book The God of Old, written by James L. Kugel of Harvard University, an expert on the Old Testament, pre-biblical Jews performed ancestral rites. Excavation of archaeological sites revealed that ancient Jews' tombs had a chimney-like hole for providing food for ancestors. The Jews' archangel is same as the general spirit in our Eastern culture. The concept of the general spirit holding a sword was transmitted from the East. Abraham received his promised son, Isaac, and grandson, Jacob. And then Isaac begot Jacob. Jacob, on the banks of the Jabbok River, was known to have wrestled with El, one of many ancient Near Eastern deities. In the end, Jacob prevailed and was given the name Israel, meaning one who prevailed against El, from which the state name Israel is derived. The three generations of Israel's patriarchs, grandfather, son, and grandson, were buried together in the cave of Hebron Hills. Jews revere Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How great is this religion of the number three? Jews have authentically preserved the origin of the Eastern number three and triune spirit culture. In the East, we Koreans have been destroyed and lost the root of most of our own history. In general terms, their culture of the number three is seen throughout Eastern and Western civilization. In my effort to explore the roots of Greek civilization, I turned to the works of the renowned British philosopher Alfred North Whitehead. Later in life, he moved to the United States and concluded his academic career as a professor of philosophy at Harvard University. In his book, Science and the Modern World, I found this sentence: Western civilization has been continuously obtaining intuition from Pythagoras. Who in the world is he? Pythagoras said that the cosmos consisted of numbers. I visited his hometown, the island of Samos near Turkey. On a statue near the beach, an amazing sentence was engraved. The number three is the central number of the universe. This great universe is comprised of the number three. I also went to the Archaeological Museum of Vathi,
a small museum built in the 1910s with the donation of a wealthy man.
I was very surprised by an artifact on the second floor. It was a sculpture of a phoenix, which was a mystical and heavenly bird of the East. There were many birds, so-called griffins. A story that I heard while I was visiting Europe was that a dragon oversees water and a phoenix oversees fire in heaven, according to the Eastern culture of the dragon phoenix. There is a relief of a griffin, though the body has been lost, on the wall behind the throne of the king of the Minoan civilization from about 4,500 years ago on the island of Crete, south of the Greek mainland. This culture of the number of three has been transmitted to the West using Pythagoras' hometown Samos Island as a gate.
Let me briefly summarize what I've said so far.
The entire pedigree of we Koreans and humanity has been proved by archaeological excavation and described as the Hwandangogi ancient Joseon culture of three in the Hwandangogi. This book elucidates the original history of Korea and humanity. We cannot deny the pedigree of Hwandangogi ancient Joseon. Even if one's history perspective is different or one has dedicated their entire life to a colonialist historical perspective, they cannot deny this fact. Hwandangogi began 9,210 years ago and was sustained for 3,301 years under the rule of 7 heavenly sovereign Hwanans. One can be shocked by another story if one explores Tian Shan. This Hwandangogi was located in the east of Tian Shan. It consisted of 12 countries,
stretching over a vast region.
Daedong was ruled by 8 Hwandangs for 1,565 years. People who are in their 50s learned about the 5,000-year-old Daedong people, the history of Daedong. The eastern history of we Koreans began through Daedong in Baekdusan Mountain. Is Daedong a country's name or the identity of an ethnic group? Daedong is the name of a country, the first country of the Korean people in the east, built by Heavenly Emperor Hwanung. The origin of the Red Devils was the symbol of Heavenly Emperor Chi-U, who was known historically as the 14th Hwanung Jiaoji. The Chinese called him Chi-U. While we called ourselves Daedong, they pejoratively called us Donggijok, meaning Eastern barbarians. They also called Jiaoji Hwanung Chi-U in the same sense. The first chapter of Sima Qian's Shiji is a record of 5 great emperors. They fabricated history by flipping the situation around, having the Yellow Emperor catch and kill Chi-U.
Historical studies prove that, rather than being killed or defeated, Chu was victorious and captured the Yellow Emperor alive. It was on the plains of Tangnok that Emperor Chi-Wu led his cavalry and defeated the army of the Yellow Emperor. A local government in China erected signs identifying the area as the site of Chi-Wu's ancient fortress. They marked it as Chi-Wu's northern fortress and Chi-Wu's southern fortress.
The most flourishing Korean state in northeastern Asia, ancient Joseon, was ruled by 49 of Daeguns for 2,096 years. The history of the entire 3 sacred dynasties was 6,960 years, just 40 years less than 7,000 years in total. These 7,000 years of history were completely eliminated by the Japanese imperialists based on the Buddhist monk Ilyon's annotation of the Samguk Yusa. He interpreted ancient Joseon's history as a myth and from the Buddhist perspective. Japanese imperialists also used Western imperial history to destroy ancient Korean history. In the section on ancient Joseon, in the Samguk Yusa, as Heavenly Emperor Hwanung declared the dream of pioneering the East, his father became aware his goal. Hwanguk was the father culture of the Eastern and Western civilizations of humanity. In that ancient time, people dreamt of being one with heavenly radiance itself. In that regard, the Hwangguk Bonggi, the second book of the Taiba Kilsa, revealed the original mindset of ancient Korean civilization, where everyone shouted, "I have become Hwan."
Resplendence.
I am Hwan.
In Geja Ho Wei Hwan, everyone called themselves Hwan, meaning resplendence.
Everyone called themselves Hwan. I am Hwan. Beyond merely the borders of the contemporary Republic of Korea, the Korean people, and Korean culture, all of humanity can be defined by the following sentences found at the beginning of the Samsonggi, the first book of the Hwandangogi. The state founded by our Hwan clan was the most ancient of all states. Residing in the heaven of great radiance, the one spirit alone is the source of universal creation transformation. O Hwandangogi, in these 4 letters, there is another sentence. We are Hwan.
The resplendence. If we analyze the Chinese characters, O means we, or our people, and Hwan means resplendence. We are Hwan. You are Hwan. I am Hwan.
The origin of ancient Korea was Hwan. The identity of all human beings of the global village is Hwan, the universal brilliance itself. The root of us Koreans, the Hwan clan's founding of a state, was the most ancient of all. Let's repeat it again. O Hwandangogi, the state founded by our Hwan clan, was the most ancient of all states. We should chant this sentence just like a mantra wherever you go. When you are sick, sad, or encounter limitations.
Remember that passage.
The Hwandangogi does not describe the genesis of the universe like the Jews. It describes the founding history of the first state of ancient Korea. This book starts from the genesis of humanity and then goes into the issue of God. Residing in the heaven of great radiance, the one Spirit alone is the source of universal creation transformation. I only spoke briefly on this in the book concert in Seoul.
While Korea's 9,000-year history and culture hold countless stories, I wanted to start by laying out the framework and share them on my final day in New York.
In Hwandangogi, the father country of all human history,
And the eternal homeland of humanity.
they called the ruler Anpagyun, meaning the one who inherited and became one with heaven's Tao.
And the one who receives the mandate of heaven and establishes the Heavenly Father's Tao.
In the history of Hwandangogi, there was no war. Prior to 6,000 years ago, there were no weapons found in excavated tombs. That era was a historical period of people pursuing harmony, brilliance, unity, spirituality,
And so forth.
There were cultural traditions surrounding the Big Dipper and Samson. These numbers, 3 and 7, were the fundamental codes of historical culture. In the Sumer civilization, the 7 governing gods judged the fate of a country, and the culture of performing offering ritual for heaven existed
In the region.
The biggest pyramid in the world exists in the east of the U.S. When speaking of pyramids, people think of Egypt, but they had nothing compared to Mayan civilization, and around 2,200 pyramids have been excavated in Mayan civilization. The Moon Pyramid and the Sun Pyramid of the ancient Mayan city Teotihuacan are typical examples.
The El Castillo Pyramid embodies the concept that heaven is round and the earth is square.
There was a documentary program on National Geographic or the History Channel introducing a huge Indian mound, which was a mountain-like pyramid in the east of the U.S. According to the documentary, in ancient times, there was a sacred place on top of the mound with 7 tables in it.
The culture of the number 7.
Interestingly, how did this culture of the number 7 come to fruition in Eastern and Western society? In Western society, the idea of 7 governing gods was transmitted to the Old Testament and the New Testament. John the Apostle went to Rome for mission work. The Romans persecuted him for threatening Roman authorities with his religion, and then punished him by banishing him to the Greek island of Patmos after being plunged into boiling oil in Rome and not suffering at all from it. In the book of Revelation, 7 angels were repeatedly mentioned. These are the 7 spirits of God. This is the origin and conclusion of the spiritual culture. The culture of the number 7 was passed down from Hwandangogi over the Tian Shan by the ancient ancestors of the East, we Koreans. The origin of Western civilization is Sumer civilization, and the origin of Eastern civilization is Daedong civilization. It has been 5,910 years since the founding of the divine city Daedong by heavenly emperor Hwanong. While 18 heavenly emperor Hwanongs ruled the country, the father of medicine Sinong and the father of Eastern and Western philosophy Bokhi featured in the history. The era when yin and yang,
The I Ching trigrams,
script,
language,
market traditions, and the diverging point of Eastern and Western culture appeared was 6,000 years ago. The era of Hwandangogi featured the Chonbugyeong, the original text of enlightenment that contained the concepts of all religions. Eastern and Western thought, a perspective on humanity, a view of history, and a vision of the universe in just 81 letters. The era of Betel featured the Samulsingo, containing the declarations of Hwanung. The era of Dangun Wanggom's ancient Joseon featured the Chamjeon Gyeong. According to the Hwandangogi, the Chamjeon Gyeong was produced at the beginning of Betel. These are the original three texts of the primordial culture of humanity.
Cheonbugyeong, Samulsingo, Chamjeon Gyeong.
Without knowing these three texts, one cannot say they are a Korean, honestly. Cheonbu means the law of heaven, heavenly law, heavenly principle. Cheonbu is the orders of God, the heavenly mandate. It can be defined in many ways. I was impressed by the research article that stated such. In Korea, hundreds of research articles and books have been published on this subject.
Let's read the Cheonbugyeong word by word. 일시 무시일 석삼국 무진본 천일일 지일이 인일삼 일적십고 무게화삼 천이삼 지이삼 인이삼 대사맘육 생칠팔구 운삼사 성환오칠 일묘연 만왕만래 용변부동본 본심본태양 악명 인중천지일 일종 무종일.
Wake up in the early morning, open the window, and read the Cheonbugyeong. It will take just 10 seconds. We should read the Cheonbugyeong hundreds and thousands of times. We Koreans were the first in the history of humanity to invent mathematics about 10,000 years ago. The original text of cosmic mathematics is the very Cheonbugyeong. If we can interpret this Cheonbugyeong properly, we can become true Koreans. We can obtain wisdom for interpreting the origin of the historical culture of Eastern Asia and the code of human civilization in this global village. Through this phrase, ilsi musi il, il is the beginning. From one, everything is originated. Heaven, earth, humans, all things. Our minds, my soul,
my mind.
all of it originated from Il, the One. The fascinating thing about the Cheonbugyeong is that its principle is symbolized by numbers. All originated from the One. But there is no beginning. This kind of indicative interpretation is a bit low level, as a matter of fact. The code of digital civilization is 1 and 0, binary. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who invented binary, realized that there was an earlier person than himself who invented this system in the East. The person was Taeho Bokhi. In the Korean national flag,
There are lines of I Ching depicting yin
as two short bars and yang as one long bar. The Mayans had amazing astronomical knowledge. They knew the concept of 0 3,000 years ago. But they brought our yin and yang symbols to make their numbers.
Interestingly, the Mayan numeral system is made up of binary symbols.
1 is 3 dots. 3, 4, 5 is 1 bar. 6 is 1 2 lines of 3 dots to make 7, 8, 9,
and so forth.
Ilsi musi il. Il, the origin of creative change and transformation of this universe, is the radiance of the universe, the mind of the creator of the universe. One is the beginning of all things, but it began from nothing. So, 0 symbolizes nothing. The culture of 0 was symbolized as nothing. Il simusi il. Everything in the universe originated from the One, and the One is the harmony of the universe. This is the concept of Muguk from Lao Tzu's Taoism. Soksam Guk Mujinbon. Samguk, the three ultimates were initiated from the eternal creation transformation of the universe. When we define truth and think of the most precious thing in the universe,
Upon contemplating the most precious thing in the universe,
there are 3 ultimates.
Truly, there are three ultimates.
What are the three ultimates? Even if these three ultimates are divided, the basis of ultimate creative change and transformation in the universe is endless. The fundamental basis is unchanged, endlessly and eternally. The Bujung Bulgam, as taught in the Heart Sutra. Even if 100,000 evils appear, the harmony of the universe is not changed. Even if 100,000 virtuous angels appear, the harmony of the universe is not changed. Mujin Bon. Our mind should be opened from this phrase. The fundamental basis should be opened. And then it declares Samguk, the three ultimates.
Chon il il, ji il I, in il sam.
The definition of the original thought of human culture is completed with this sentence. Chon il il. Heaven contains the basis of the ultimate harmony of the universe as it is. Ji il yi. Mother Nature, the earth, contains the one as it is. In il sam. Humanity contains the radiance and spirituality of the creator of the universe as it is. What is more important than this? Chon il il. Ji il yi. In il sam. Why is the heaven one, earth two, and humanity three? It's a question of position. Heaven is the basis of yang. Earth is the basis of yin. In 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, the Heaven One Father is the basis of all yang of infinite numbers. The Earth Two Mother is the basis of all negative numbers. This kind of interpretation is the most basic. What are human beings? Who am I? Human beings are the sum of life, spirituality, harmony of the parents, heaven and earth, and the radiance of the universe.
Through this, I come to be who I truly am.
Heaven 1 plus Earth 2 equals humanity 3. Humans are such noble beings. To summarize one thing about ancient Joseon, we interpret it as the history of 3 dynasties. Her capital was moved from Harbin to Baeksan and Hwandangogi. When you read the Dangun Segi, records of the Dangun dynasty, you can see the relationship in Northeast Asia between ancient Joseon and China's Xia dynasty, Shang dynasty, and Zhou dynasty in detail. Because King Ji of Xia was a tyrant and a wicked person, people suffered and wanted him driven from power. They had to get permission and military support from East Ancient Joseon. At first, Dangun Wanggom gave Ji an opportunity to mend his ways, but he didn't repent. Dangun Wanggom then used military force. That was how the Xia dynasty collapsed, and the Shang dynasty of King Tang was founded. Confucius's 7th-generation descendant, Gongbin, described in detail the backstory of the Xia
and Shang dynasties in the Book of the Eastern Sage.
The Prime Minister Yi Yun's master was Yuija.
I visited his tomb. Yi Yun was a chancellor of the Shang dynasty and the ancestral founder of chefs. He received the Tao from Yuija, the national teacher of the 11th Dangun, Dohe.
This is described in Chinese history.
The more surprising incidents happened in the period of the 3rd and 4th Dangun. The Dangun Segi states that Sakshong became the progenitor of the Hyongno, the Huns, during the reign of the 3rd Dangun. It also records that the 4th Dangun appointed his brother Osadal as the first Khan of the Mongols. People may criticize,
wasn't this all fabricated? How can we believe it? Interestingly, there is no historical record whatsoever about the origin of the Huns, the Xiongnu, who brought down Western Rome, the ancient Western civilization. The Huns' history is featured only in the Dangun Segi of the Hwandangogi. There is no document about the origin of the Mongolians. It's too amazing to believe. It's truth that we cannot accept easily. Therefore, the original history of the Eastern nomad culture that both created and dominated European civilization is summarized in the Hwandangogi.
The truth is revealed through the Hwandangogi.
The name Xiongnu was made by the Chinese. Because they had suffered at the hands of the Huns, the Chinese hated them and called them Xiongnu, meaning ominous slave in Chinese characters. Originally, the tribe name was the Huns, Dongho, Ohan, etc. All of these names were originally based on the concept of the radiance of Hwanguk. These people had a custom of artificial cranial deformation.
The Huns were a horse-riding people who traveled on horseback, and
they always carried cup cauldrons called dongbok on their horses. These dongbok have been found in many excavation sites of ancient Korean civilization. They were used for performing offering rituals for heaven, and they buried broken dongbok with relics of a deceased king.
dongbok, or bronze cauldron.
Westerners describe the Huns and the Mongolians in their books as good fire arrow shooters.
Research by Western scholars suggests that the Xiongnu employed flaming arrows to shake the enemy's spirit and seize the initiative.
The Huns split off into the Eastern Huns and Western Huns. The Eastern Huns was split into the South and North. The Northern Huns suddenly appeared in AD 370 and brought down European countries, including the Western Roman Empire. The Goths, France, Italy, and Russians say they are descendants of the Huns.
Turning to Russia, since the Russian principalities were once under Hunnic rule, they may be considered heirs to that legacy.
Then, where were their ancestors from? They came from the east during the Dangun Wanggom period, which was around 4,000 to 4,200 years ago. One can request real evidence. When we look at the tomb styles of the Huns who conquered the Eurasian continent, we can see they were jokseokmyo, constructed by stacked stones. On the other hand, the Altai area tomb style was mokgwakmyo, and the inside was structured as a wooden box. The overall shape follows the rule of heaven is rounded and earth is square. The more shocking finding is that when Hun kings passed away, they put the body's head toward the Big Dipper,
which is called Chilsongdu, or the seven-star head.
All of these pieces of evidence suggest that they maintained their original Eastern culture. In fact, the reason they were able to maintain such strong states was the tradition of the Chanyu, a leader of the Huns. Chanyu means the son of heaven, earth, sun, and moon. The Chanyu governed the central territory. Two more kings supported the Chanyu. The east and the west were ruled by them respectively. This was the very policy that originated from the wise kings of the left and right that were mentioned in the Hwandangogi.
Once again, it should be stressed that the Xiongnu's dual kingship system finds its origin in the Samshin culture of Dangun Joseon.
Emperor Gaozu of the Han dynasty in Chinese history kneeled to the Hun. His seven-generation grandson, Emperor Wu of the Han, finally defeated the Huns. As a result, the son of the Huns king was captured as a hostage. Who was the son? His name was Kim Il-jae. Emperor Wu hired Kim Il-jae as a secretary because he was very smart and he rescued Emperor Wu from an assassination attempt. After that,
the Emperor Wu praised Il-jae
and gave him a tuhu position with a large fiefdom.
Wang Mang was from Han imperial consort families who seized the throne
and founded the Shin dynasty.
He attempted revolutionary social reform, but his impractical policies led to the country's demise. When the Shin dynasty collapsed, the descendants of Kim Il-jae escaped to the Korean peninsula and became the progenitors of the Kim family of Korea. Some of the early ancestors of the Kims include Kim Suro, the founder and king of Gaya, and Kim Alji, whose descendants formed the Kim royal clan of Silla. This is how the surname Kim originated in Korea. Han Emperor Wu bestowed the surname Kim upon Kim Il-jae.
All Kim families around the world are the descendants of Kim Il-jae.
The unification of the three kingdoms by Silla was also accomplished by these Kims, the descendants of the Huns.
The conclusion of today's talk is that the subject of culture, history, and enlightenment in the Chonbuk-gyeong is summarized in 4 letters, originated from one and returning to one. Ilsil-jong, or Iljong-ilsi. This is the final destination of all religions, all truth seekers, all human education, and all political culture. Now we Koreans have lost most of our original history and culture. Koreans deny their own national founders. Koreans don't know Korean history. This is a grim reality. Japanese have retained the core of their original culture of ancient Korea, and the Eastern and Western human civilization have as well. If you travel seeking the history and culture of Japan, I would like to recommend going to 2 sites first.
They say that if you cast a bottle into the sea from Busan, it will drift ashore in Izumo, a seaside city I visited in Shimane Prefecture, Japan.
Our party arrived there and wanted to check a shrine near the sea. The name of the shrine was Chul, going out, Un, cloud in Chinese characters, meaning the cloud of creation transformation spreading overhead. That's our Korean culture right there. We Korean place gumjul ropes made of rice straws indicating sacred places and off-limits, right? Have you ever seen this kind of a huge gumjul? It was so huge that it is wider than a human is tall. A humongous gumjul was hung up on the ceiling of Sinrakjeon. Izumo Shrine was the very first shrine and the origin of over 10,000 shrines in Japan around 2,000 years ago. The original shrine was not the same formation as the contemporary building. The shrine used to be built on top of many gigantic columns in ancient times. The remaining ancient columns are so big that not even adults are able to wrap their arms around them. 3 columns were combined as one group, and 9 groups of columns were the foundation of the shrine. That's the very culture of the Chonbuk-gyeong. However, during the Meiji Restoration period of modern Japan, politicians intentionally suppressed the Izumo Shrine because it was related to Korea and turned the Ise Shrine near Tokyo into the main shrine. They started flipping the historical script. In Ise Grand Shrine, Amaterasu Omakami is consecrated as their sun god. The shrine land is about 1.4 acres. Every morning and evening, priests in white and wearing hat make food and dedicate it to their god. The very first act of Japanese governments after a cabinet reshuffle is paying their respects at this Ise shrine. Why did the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor during World War II? Where did the Japanese get the modern military power that allowed them to attack America? It came from the Ise Shrine. What's the symbol of our whole history? Rounded heaven, squared earth. From ancient civilization, humans have been living to unite with the Heavenly Father and Earthly Mother. What is the life of unity with the heaven and earth parents? What is the thing they accomplished? Who were the humans who synchronized with the heaven and earth parents? They were the Great One, Heaven One, Earth One, Human One, another name for which is Tail, meaning Great One. In Japan,
to become one with the heavenly and earthly parents, traditional festivals are still held to this day.
Let's take a look at their festivals. They raise flags written with the Chinese characters Tail, Great One. Such a festival is also held in the palace of the Japanese emperor in Tokyo. In this festival, named Matsuri, they raise flags of the dragon and phoenix culture. When I visited Ise Shrine, I asked a female priest guide about the meaning of Tail. She said she did not know about it and will tell me next time after learning about it. However, there are not many people in Japan who know the origin of Tail culture. Should one read the Hwandangogi, they will be enlightened to the ultimate thought of humanity and the essence of the original culture of Tail. Great One. Now is the time of returning to the origin. Conflict on the interpretation of history has been stubbornly sustained because the reality of our ancient Korean history was fabricated or annihilated, and modern history has also been distorted.
This is why tensions surrounding historical interpretation have only grown stronger and continue to this day. Korean history is distorted, both in its ancient and modern periods.
What is the true starting point of modern human history? That is Gaebyeok. History, Gaebyeok. The cosmic principle is changing. The universe is shifting from the cosmic summer to the cosmic autumn. That was the Donghak Revolution, in which 600,000 peasants rose in rebellion. The theme was that the cosmic autumn would begin and the center of history would be the East. I brought a book written by Dr. Hong Bom-ri, revealing the truth of history. He now resides in L.A. But when he studied history at Harvard University, faculties advised him to write a dissertation about the Donghak Revolution. He was told that without knowing the Donghak Revolution, one cannot understand modern human history. So he studied and published this Western-style book of Gaebyeok in 2007. In most universities, including Harvard University in the U.S., it has been misunderstood that Eastern history started from the Yellow River Civilization in China. However, Dr. Ri researched the historical documents of China and revealed that the people who built Chinese culture and history were the Eastern sages 10,000 years ago. The ancient Koreans founded Chinese history and governed dynasties. The President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, got shocked after reading this book and invited Dr. Ri to the White House. President Obama appointed Dr. Ri as a member of the Kitchen Cabinet. Since then, President Obama has come to know the truth of the history of Northeastern Asia. Because of that, President Obama has praised Korean culture, education, and so forth in a positive manner. The true starting point of modern Korean history was the revolution of history. But half of the 60,000 Donghak Revolution peasants were massacred. The queen of Joseon dynasty was cruelly assassinated and her body was horribly mangled. When 12 colonialist countries tried bringing down the Joseon dynasty, the last king Gojong declared that we are the true empire. We are the true 13th empire.
He insisted we Koreans are the country of the Son of Heaven.
Emperor Gojong rebuilt Hwangwoo Palace beside the current location of the Joseon Hotel. Gojong declared the country of the emperor as the Dae Han Empire. After that, the Republic of Korea was founded. However, the starting point of modern Korean history was brought to a halt in just 13 years, and the roots of our Korean history were completely severed. After going through the Korean War that generated 10 million separated families, we have stood up as one of the 10 richest countries in the world. We cannot be a developed country without regaining our culture and history. We Koreans will never be able to take a lead in history. 82 million Koreans and the Korean Americans here in New York today are about to depart on a long journey to recover the original history we have lost. Today, we have begun the history of the radiance of heaven and earth. In attaining the life of the Taeil, Great One, or to use another word, Dae Han, Great Han, that achieve oneness with the minds of our heaven and earth parents. Today, all of us, going beyond worldly wealth, fame, and glory, as we return to the homeland of true culture and history, I would like to congratulate you all as you set out on your journey to become true Dae Han as proud Koreans. I will conclude my talk here today. Thank you very much.
Declaration for the Restoration of Korea's True History. STB Sangsang Broadcasting commemorates the 100th anniversary of the publication of Hwandangogi by embarking on a great journey to reclaim the true history of Korea. Hwan Nation, Daedong Nation, Joseon, together nearly 7,000 years. Northern Buyo, 182 years. Korea, a people of historical and cultural heritage under the radiant light of heaven and earth. At the root of Hallyu, the Korean wave culture that is sweeping across the globe, lies the 9,000-year vibrant Shinbaram, the spirit wind culture of the Korean people. For the 83 million Korean people and 7 billion global brothers and sisters, this is a project to restore the primal history of humanity and the Korean people for a future of Sangsang.
Promoting a 10 million signature campaign to rediscover Korean history. Promoting the publication of correct history textbooks. Holding Hwandangogi Book Concerts at home and abroad. Hosting cultural events to popularize the Hwandangogi. We invite all viewers to actively participate in the great journey for the restoration of Korea's true history, initiated by STB Sangsang Broadcasting.
The great journey to restore the primal history and original culture of the Korean people. Busan, Daegu, Jeonju, Suwon, Gwangju, Incheon, Jeju, Daejeon, Seoul, LA, New York, Choncheon, Changwon, Ilsan, and at the National Assembly. This brings to a close the Hwandangogi Book Concert presented by Supreme Master Jongdosanim An Gyeongjeon.